Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled How to Increase Profits in Sanity by Running a Lean Law Firm. Today's webinar is being presented free of charge as part of the 2020 Virtual Annual Florida Bar Convention and is brought to you by the Florida Bar Continuing Legal Education Committee, Legal Fueled Practice Resource Center of the Florida Bar, and Rocket Matter. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. We'll be recording this webinar and we'll share the link after the event. The recording and any supporting resources will also be posted on our website, legalfuel.com. Any questions you may have during today's presentation can be asked through the Q&A feature, which you'll find down at the bottom of your Zoom screen in the control panel. Our presenters will do the best to answer any questions you have. However, due to time constraints, they may not be able to address them all. Today's presentation has been approved by the Florida Bar for 1 hour of General CLE credit and 1 hour of technology, and the course number is going to be 3368. I would now like to introduce today's presenter, Larry Port. Larry Port is the CEO of Rocket Matter, a leading legal cloud-based practice management and time and billing application. He's a speaker and award-winning writer at the crossroads of the legal profession, cutting-edge technology and business management. His experience running a technology company and insight into law firm operations led to his co-authoring of the #1 best-selling ABA book, The Lean Law Firm. To enjoy today's presentation, and take it away, Larry.
Yeah. Okay. We got an ask to repeat the course number. All right. So we got our first question there, Jonathan. Was it 3368? Did I hear that correctly?
You got it. 3368.
All right. So hopefully you can all see my screen. Just let me know in the webinar chat widget if you can see my screen, and please use the chat widget because it is super fun if it's interactive. We got a lot of people on today. We got over 400, and I've done it when there's this many people, and usually you get some interesting dialogues going. All right, great, wonderful. So people, Terry, thank you very much. Melissa, Troy, wow, all right, a lot of people. Okay, great. Let's make it fun. So I know these are difficult times for law firms. Let me tell you, so I run Rocket Matter in here. Let me get my bio up on the screen, and Jonathan did a wonderful job repeating my intro, which I probably need to update. But in addition to other things, you know, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm an animal lover. I have 2 dogs and a cat. I don't get to code anymore. I wish I could still code, but like once I built Rocket Matter, then, you know, now I have to run Rocket Matter. So I miss it. I love it. And I would encourage you, if you have like kids and they like to code, great career. Or if you want to like change careers, I love coding. So very active in the Anti-Defamation League. I'm a fighter of hate. I'm a seeker of wellness. I'm doing the meditation thing. You may have seen my stuff that I've done with the Florida Bar on that. But, you know, in my role as the CEO of Rocket Matter, one of the things that's interesting is I get to work. I have this weird vantage point where I see how thousands of law firms work. And also, you know, one of the things that we're able to do is we're able to run aggregate anonymized data across all of our installs, and we can see certain trends that are happening in the industry. So let me tell you a little bit about what's going on right now. And I'd be curious through the chat widget if you're seeing these kind of things. What we've seen is that during the April and May time period, that there was a significant drop-off in new clients. That was the biggest drop-off. There was a drop-off in new matter creation, and there was a decrease in invoicing. That's one of the things that we saw across all of our, and if you look at a trend line across all of our installs, in June, we're starting to see a little bit of a rebound. So I would be curious to see, so the numbers in June seem to be coming back up from what we were seeing in April and May. So I'd be curious to hear what your experience is there. So that's like a little bit of a data point that you guys can have. And if you have any questions for me, definitely ask them along the way. Now, so I have a co-author. His name is Dave Maxfield. He is not here. Okay. But Dave is really smart. So I'm not a lawyer. I'm a software engineer. I built software for the legal profession. Before that, I built it for HR and payroll software. I built it for financial software like equities and futures and things like that. And I also built stuff for the Defense Department when I was in graduate school. So you know, my ideas are like, look, I see how the software industry works. I don't understand why law firms aren't using these basic techniques that we use in software, because it could certainly apply these lean ideas. And then Dave is this guy that I met. He was a speaker at ABA Tech Show. And what Dave said is that, like, yeah, he runs his firm with these things. So I met him years ago, and eventually we ended up writing this book for the American Bar Association, and we wanted to make it fun. So, like, there's graphic novel elements, you know, and so there's like drawings in it, and it was the first one to do that for the ABA. We're actually coming out with an audiobook, so if you don't like to read and you'd prefer to listen, that's going to be coming out in probably a month or two. Somebody said audio is cutting in and out, so I just want to make sure that is anybody else having that issue, or is that issue just want to make sure. There we go. All right. I'm getting all sorts of like stuff into the chat about the audio. But if you are having issues with the audio going in and out, that's on your side, because as long as people are hearing me, that means that it's working. Okay. All right. We're all good now. We're getting a lot of okays, thumbs up. Thank you. All right. So in general, what is lean? So first of all, it does come from the Toyota production system. Toyota production system was invented by Taiichi Ono over in Japan. And it's a mindset. And it's a mindset about what is of value to your clients and what is waste. So basically, waste is anything that's not of value to your client. So it's very easy to understand. So that's kind of, you know, when we talk about waste, we'll go into that, but it's divided into different types. When we talk about revenue, we're going to be talking about something called the income formula, which is really kind of like a revenue formula. And if you're new to financial modeling, it's a very, very simple, basic, and effective financial model. There's one of the drawings from our book. We're going to talk about waste, as I mentioned, the different types of it. We're going to talk about constraints. Okay, so these are just like I'm just planting seeds here about what we're going to be going into. And all this stuff is going to help you run a more efficient firm and, you know, really focus on what's important to your clients and get paid more effectively. We'll talk a little bit about technology too, because technology is one of the most powerful ways to eliminate waste, which is what we talk about a lot in the book. So from a big picture perspective, is a law firm so different from a factory? On the surface, the answer is yes. A law firm is very different than a factory because, you know, it is a, you know, you're dealing with a completely different set of things. It's not a manufactured good. But, you know, underneath that, really, let's think about what a factory is really kind of doing for the end user. So really, you have raw materials coming in and you have product going out. That's ultimately what's happening at a very like high level in a factory. And in a law firm, it's very similar. So you have a client coming to you with a problem. You are running it through a process, and value is created on the other side. So, you know, you have problem, process, solution, or at least attempt at solution or settlement or something. That is what you're doing that's similar to a factory. And if we can embrace that idea at a very high level, then we can start to model how our law firm works. I am going to raise my desk, so you are going to see me standing as my desk raised. I have one of these like sit-down, stand-up desks, which, by the way, I highly recommend for everybody. These are awesome. Okay, so let's explore this a little bit more. So if you use something called a Kanban board, which is a big thing in Lean, then you can start modeling your process the same way a factory can model how they do things. So a Kanban board is simply a left to right mechanism, and it is deceptively simple. You look at this thing and you're like, okay, this is what a kid would do in their project in like junior high. But this has tremendous power, and this is like one of the foundational elements of Lean. So the way a Kanban board works, and I would encourage you to try this if you haven't done it before, and it doesn't have to be a software thing. It could be physical with like index cards or Post-it notes first and a whiteboard or something. And by the way, I'm going to be distributing slides to answer Joan's question. So law firms can manage their firms this way. So if this is the most basic one there is, up next, work in progress, done, right? So you have all of your cases that you have to work on. You have all of your stuff that's done has to be clearly defined. So done means that money with firms. One thing that I see is that they're very interested in getting new clients because they think that is the ticket to new revenue. In reality, one of the things that you see is that a lot of firms, they have all this stuff that's in work in progress that they never finish. So, or that they delay finishing. So when you have, when you don't clear out the cases that are in work in progress, that's when problems start arising in a law firm. Because and I've even seen this with personal injury firms that have won their cases and that they're just very slow to collect on, right? So it's something about the victory, but then they don't collect. But in an hourly firm, not sending out the invoices and not collecting efficiently is a major problem that they have. And so they think that they think they need more clients. So then they go and they spend $3,000 a month on advertising. So then they're spending $3,000. They spend $3,000 a month on advertising, and then nothing happens. So they're not getting more clients in, or they are getting more clients in, and they're still not finishing the cases. And if they're not careful, then you create a downward spiral. Okay. So if we know that we have Kanban boards, then we can start. This has all sorts of implications down the road. But before I get any further, I do have some questions. Okay, all the questions are out. Michael says my presentation would be more beneficial if you could leave out the so's you know and like. Noted. I will try to leave out the so's you know and like. Nothing more appreciated than brutal honesty. So there we go. Oops, I said so. All right. So let's talk a little bit about income formula. So the income formula is very basic financial modeling. All right. So if you've never been introduced to financial modeling before, it is a way to approximate what kind of income you're going to be having down the road. Right. So, and this is new for a lot of attorneys. Now, if you think about it, when you have this formula is very, very simple. It says that your income is going to be related to your throughput rate times your average unit value. And we'll talk about what that means in a second. But one thing that I want people to understand is that if you want more insight into the kind of money that you're going to be making down the road, then financial modeling is your friend. It is critical to be able to do this. Like if you talk to anybody who's in the investment or the private equity world, then they are going to be big financial modelers. In Rocket Matter, when we have to financial model what we do, we don't have the luxury of having something as simple as what's on my screen here. We have to model, like, for example, how much the subscription to the software costs, how many of those people end up buying our credit card processing Lex charge, what's the average size of users per firm, what are, and so like our financial modeling has all these really complex and crazy different elements into it. But for you guys, for the legal profession, it really has to do about how many cases you can finish a year and what the average value of those cases are. So, okay, so let's go into there's really only three elements, but really only two elements, and if you exclude the result. So the first one is the throughput rate. So a throughput rate is, and I'm going to define what case units are, but the throughput rate is the number of case units your law firm finishes during a given time. So do this exercise. How many cases do you think you finished in 2019? You don't have to like go back into your history and look at it, but just think in your head, like, how many cases that you finished in 2019, and how many cases do you think you're going to finish in 2020, right? So those are like kind of numbers I want you to be thinking about. Now, if we look at this same Kanban board that I showed, right, No, it has to be done in the same time period. If what you see in the done column is done in the same year, then you have an input rate of 3, or you have a throughput rate of 3. I'm sorry. So throughput rate of 3. So you got to know your throughput rate. Average case unit value. Okay, now a lot of attorneys like struggle with this one because they're like, well, I have such a radically different value for my cases. So I have some that are pretty small and I have some that are pretty big. That's true. For a lot of people, that is true. For some people, they trade in a much narrower range. Let's say you do estate planning or so on and so forth, and it's more transactional, more flat fee oriented, then it's more of a narrow range. But let's say that it's, you're a litigator, it could be anything, right? However, you do have an average, because an average is computed by adding up all of the different cases that you have and dividing them by the number of those cases. So you do have an average. And then I've had say, well, that's kind of an artificial number, but financial forecasting is part science, but it's also part art. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out, okay, how much money do I need to be able to sustain the life that I want to live, right? That's what financial forecasting does. So we know 2 things now. We know our throughput rate, how many cases we can finish in a year, and then what our average case unit value is, right? So, sorry, I went backwards, right? So if we can increase the number, what this means, if we have an equation now, if we can increase the number of cases we finish in a year and or increase our average case unit value, then we can increase our income. Okay, so we got a question from Randy. He says, sounds like much of this seminar is not applicable for hourly transactional billing. We don't care how many cases we finish because we keep billing until the case is closed and we get paid currently. So if you're an hourly biller, and somebody else asked this, if we aren't doing contingency work, why does the number of cases finished matter, right? So the first thing that I want to say about that is as long as if you're doing hourly billing, the one of the most important things that I can stress to everybody is that you have consistency with your invoicing, right? If you're doing flat fee or contingency billing, this is where you can really make a lot of money, right? And one thing that I'm seeing with hourly billers is, you've probably heard about alternative fee arrangements. So the whole notion there is that hourly billing is great. As a consumer, I hate it. If I have the choice between 2 law firms, one that does hourly billing and one that has a handle on their costs and can divide it up into phase-based works, or something called a flat fee with collar, then I'm going to definitely go with the alternative fee arrangement firm. And more legal consumers want that, right? So for example, with hourly billing, the way that you can chop that up is that if you know on average how much it takes you to finish a certain portion of a case, not maybe the entire case, but at least a certain portion of a case, then you can do things like, okay, I'm going to charge a flat fee for this phase, or I'm going to charge a flat fee with collar, which means that if I go above or below a certain amount, then I'm going to charge an overage or give something back to the client. And we have, if you're interested, I have a white paper that I can send you on alternative fee arrangements. But the more that hourly firms can go and adopt those mechanisms, the more competitive they will be in the market and the more money they will be able to make, because what they can then do is when you charge on an hourly basis, you're limited to that hour. But if you charge on a flat fee and you can reduce the amount of time that you spend on a case, then you end up making more money. So there's a big incentive, in my opinion, for hourly billers to take a good hard look at this. Okay, let's see. Yeah, if you want somebody says it is impossible to do flat fee. This is Carla. It is impossible to do flat fee, et cetera, for complex transactional law because you never know what the matter involves until you see documents and get into the matter, right? So that's why phase-based approach to things is great. If you have to come up with an alternative fee in advance of seeing anything, that would be foolish, right? You need to be educated about how you do things, and you need to divide your cases up into phases, right? So that's one of the approaches to doing that. So there's lots of ways to skinning this cat, and a lot of attorneys have figured it out. So what I would encourage you to do is take a good hard look at that, and because you don't want to get flat-footed. That's for sure. You don't want the competition to come and knock you out. So if you want the ebook, I saw some people requesting it, email me, larry@rocketmatter.com with alternative fee ebook in the subject. So larry@rocketmatter.com with alternative fee ebook in the subject line. Right. Wonderful. Because I'm not sure if I'm going to get a transcription of this chat window or not. Okay. Now, how do we increase the number of cases that we finish in a given year? One thing you do here is you shorten your cycle time, right? So, and believe me, I've given this presentation or some form of it to thousands of lawyers across the country. And if you have questions, ask them. And some people are asking questions, and I want to be able to make sure that I answer your questions, right? Especially, there's some really good things in here that I'm seeing coming through the chat. So cycle time, right, is closely related to throughput rate. And the way you can think about both of these things is if you think about like what it's like to go to a restaurant. So cycle time, and I'll get to the restaurant analogy in a second here, but what it is the amount of time a case unit spends between the day you accept it formally and the day that case is considered done. And even for you hourly billers out there that says that say that this does not apply to you, if you can shorten the time it takes you to receive payment, you make more money, right? So so that's very important. By the way, somebody was asking about my email address. It's larry@rocketmatter.com. So the amount of time it takes you between the time that you accept a case and the time that you collect money, right? So that's very important. Okay. Now think about like a restaurant and what a restaurant is like, right? So a restaurant illustrates this phenomenon. This is called Little's Law of Systems is really what we're talking about here. So this is all like systems thinking. And the reason that this Kanban board is important and thinking about your law firm as a factory is important is because it allows you to see your firm as a factory. And once you see your firm as a factory, you can apply things like systems thinking, and you can like do all the slicing and dicing to like make your firm more efficient, right? Randy is saying, attorneys are a profession subject to ethical rules and prescriptions. We are neither a restaurant nor an engineering coding. The DC Bar Association opines that flat fees must be reasonable commensurate with actual time spent on the case. That is very true. Yeah, you absolutely have to do that, which is why flat fees with collar are certainly worth looking at. So, and I can get into those. That's an alternative fee arrangement that I mentioned before, which makes sure that you are being fair to the client in addition to yourself. But still, if you can finish more cases in a given year, it makes more sense. And if you can do it more efficiently, all the better. Now, so a restaurant, it's obvious that a law firm isn't a restaurant, Randy. It's obvious that a law firm isn't a factory, Randy. So the point is that by looking at other industries, we can make analogies and understand systems, okay? So if you look at a restaurant and you think about like how tables are turned, so these illustrate system thinking ideas, right? So so the faster a restaurant will turn a table, it might not be pleasant to you as a client. That's the one thing. And you got to, client care is obviously something that you have to take into consideration. But we all know that the more tables a restaurant turns in one night, then the more money they make. And so the shorter people stay at tables, the more money the restaurant will make if they're all doing the same thing here. So in any case, so that's the whole idea, right? You want to be able to think at least from a systems perspective. And let's think about this in the context of law. How do we shorten cycle time? How do we shorten cycle time? How do we make our law firms more efficient? How do we get more cases per year across the finish line? Well, that's where waste comes into play. So let's think about waste for a second. What are the different types of waste that you can think of in your law firm? So right now, remember, waste is defined in lien as something that does not provide value to the client. What does not provide value to the client that you are doing? Even CLEs like this, now Randy may disagree with me, but this provides value to your client, because this is helping you understand and practice law better. Any CLE is, right? So any CLE that you're doing allows you to keep your license and move the ball forward for your practice. Now, what doesn't provide value to your client? Well, a lot of things. So this is the category that Taiichi Ono defined when he talked about lean. And a lot of them apply to legal as well. So, for example, transportation and motion waste. How long does it take you to find contacts and documents? Are you not paperless yet? That's a big question I have. If you are not paperless, then there is a lot of waste going on in your law firm, right? Because it takes a while to find documents. If somebody else has those documents, then you don't have those documents. You can't get them. You have to file them back and forth. Can you meet clients virtually? I hope so, because what has been going on in the past couple months, you need to be able to meet the clients virtually. So if you haven't been meeting them virtually, I'm assuming that you figured out a way to do it. Can you use tools like DocuSign? Very important. Love using DocuSign. By the way, I've engaged attorneys. I'm a consumer, and I'm not that young. I mean, I know I am technically savvy. I'm a software engineer, but when I've engaged estate planning attorneys, I've engaged litigators, I've engaged deal attorneys, so on and so forth. And I can't think of the last time I've ever been in their office. Maybe I've met them for lunch, but there's a lot that you can do to avoid this. By the way, somebody's asking me what MUDA is. Let's see. MUDA is Japanese for waste. So in the lean system, they talk about MUDA. So it's a good question. All right. Inventory and weighting. So the good news is that we don't have physical inventory in the knowledge profession. So we don't have to worry about manufacturing a bunch of guitars and then having a bunch of guitars sitting in our warehouse, right? But we do have cases, and cases are our inventory. So for me in software, it's a little different. It's more like projects are our inventory. Are you closing out your cases promptly? This is, like I said, the number one issue that affects law firms. If they want to increase revenues, close out those cases sooner than later. Collect sooner than later, right? Invoice often and collect and invoice early and often. And that's another rule, is that a lot of times law firms don't invoice promptly. If you're not doing a 30-day invoicing cycle, then you're going to be getting more and more haircuts from your clients. So we have a kind of a rule, and we have, by the way, another ebook that we have, we do have best practices around invoicing and collections and things like that. So if you want that ebook, I can send you an ebook on that, Larry@rocketmatter.com. So we have a lot of this content related that can help you. Okay. There are many reasons for law firms leaving money on the table, ranging from poor billing practices to unpalatable nature of asking clients for money to a lack of investment in good technology. And what I want to do is, after I go through these waste types, I want to kind of show you some real efficiencies that you can gain, right? Okay. Going paperless. If you're not running a paperless office, you're neck deep in MUDA or waste, right? That is a major, major thing. So, and then over processing. This is another form of waste. Can some of your processes be simplified? How do you generate invoices? How do you generate documents, right? So big picture again, if your income is equal to your throughput rate times your average case unit value, right? So if you're able to eliminate all this waste from your firm, you're able to get more things across the finish line, and you're able to increase your income. The other way that you can do it is, if you're hourly or flat fee oriented and you're not contingency, is you can increase your rate. Now, that's oftentimes a very scary thing for an attorney, but take a look at and see what your rate is, and is your rate, if even an increase of 5%, usually a 5% increase in your rate is not going to like knock you out of your, competitive standing. And it's going to have a pretty profound impact on, what you're able to earn in a given year. So that's something absolutely worth considering. So you want to look at not just the throughput rate, but the average case unit value. Contingency, you don't have a lot of control over the average case unit value. The reason that is because, obviously, you don't have complete control over like the settlement or what's going to happen with that. So in a contingency case, it's changing the value of a case is not as easy to do as in a flat fee or an hourly case. So if you're contingency, then you really have to focus on your efficiencies, much more so than an hourly biller does. If you are an hourly biller or a flat fee biller, then you really do have to, you can look at the average case unit value. But like I said before, I really would strongly encourage you to take a look at different flat fee models, even if it's a phase-based approach, just so that you don't get annihilated in the years moving forward as people move away from the hourly bill, right? So one other thing let's talk about is another way that you can kind of like eliminate constraints is this notion of, or you can shorten cycle times, is this notion of eliminating constraints. So eliminating constraints, what is this? Like, let me tell you a story, and this comes from the book The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt, who is like an Israeli physicist that wrote one of the most important books about systems thinking ever called The Goal. And it's actually kind of worth maybe getting the audiobook for or reading. The Goal is considered a business classic, and it's a novel. So we actually wrote ours as like half novel, half business book, just to make it less dry and more engaging. And to some extent, it's also kind of like a nod and an homage to The Goal, what Goldratt wrote. And so he tells the story. So the story is that the guy, the protagonist, has to turn around a factory. So he's in this town, and like basically everything's on his back. He like grew up in this town, and if the factory closes, then everybody's going to lose their job, and it's going to become this like dead Rust Belt town. So like this is the setting of the book. So he's got to like go into this factory that's failing and turn it around. And the whole idea is about what he did was he eliminated constraints. So, there'd be some machines that weren't going fast enough and other machines that were going too fast, which caused their own problems. So really the whole idea is it boils down to like this experience that he had on a Boy Scout hike. So he was responsible, the protagonist, from getting like 12 Boy Scouts from point A to point B without any of the Boy Scouts like getting lost or eaten by tigers or whatever. So the way you can't just like let the group go and like people arrive when they arrive. Like they all kind of have to leave and arrive at the same time. And he kept on seeing these huge gaps in the line between the kids. And what he realized is that they had this one guy named Herbie who was super slow. And the insight was that they could only go as fast as the slowest person in their troop. And that's true for any system. And this is a kind of a crazy thing to think about. But if you have a factory, let's say, and one machine is able to produce 60 parts a day, the next in line produces 40 parts a day, and then the machine after that produces 70 parts a day, the fastest you'll ever go is 40 parts per day, because that's the most that any one given part of the chain can produce. So your law firm is constricted by your weakest link, right? You're only going to be as fast as the slowest part of your process, right? So that's another. Oops, lost audio again. All right, I am going to have to replace this. Thank you very much, guys. But it looks like I'm going to have to replace this wire. All right, are we good now? We good now? Apologies about this wire. I'll have Jonathan buy me a new one. Okay. All right, we're good. We're good. Great. Thank you. Okay. So that's the whole idea, is that when you start seeing when you start seeing pileups and given swim lanes, then that's when you have problems, right? So let's say in a real law firm, you're not going to just have 3 swim lanes. You're going to have a lot more. You're going to have, like, let's say you're going to have up next, then you might have discovery, then you might have pre-trial, then you might define however many lanes you want. Like, let's say you have 8 lanes, and when you see a collection of cards in one lane, you have a constraint. There's something going on in that lane that you need to take a good hard look at and make sure that you can fix. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the power of Kanban boards. So that, plus the whole idea of like measuring your firm and seeing it as a system. So let's go into, let's get out of this presentation for a second, and let me show you some technology. Is there any technology that people have specific questions about? I know somebody had a question about DocuSign. Somebody said, question about DocuSign. Someone said DocuSign is not user-friendly. The person using it cannot make changes to the document. Well, if somebody's making changes to the document, then you're not at the point where you need to be using DocuSign. You know, DocuSign is for the signature portion of it, right? So if you're still going back and forth on a document, then you're not ready for DocuSign at that point. Somebody said, what are some examples of a Kanban board for a contingency-based practice? Well, examples of a Kanban board for a contingency-based practice, let's see. We can do one together, actually. Why don't we do one together? I'm going to use a tool called Trello, and we can build a board, right? All right. So let me log into Trello, and let's create a new board. Okay, let's call this sample for Florida Bar, and let's just use a blank background, create board. Okay, all right. So let's say, so Arali, who is in there, let's say that the first thing is intake, okay? All right, now the next thing might be investigation, right? What might be another swim lane? How about, you know, in this case, let's do pre-suit. All right, so Arali is actually doing this. All right, there's a lot of these different things in here. Evaluation. Let's maybe, do we have something where are we doing discovery in this or not? I don't know. But then we go to pre-trial. And then you might have like settlement, or you might have trial or something, and then you might have done, right? Okay. Add list. Right. So that's just an example of like what you might have for like one type of case, right? Now, here's what you might want to find out. Can some of these be combined, right? Because, you know, ideally we can shrink it down, right? This tool is called Trello, by the way. And one thing is that we do have Kanban boards inside of Rocket Matter, and they're tied into our our workflow production system. So I don't have an example that I think I can show right now because it's like a little bit of more of advanced features for like kind of more enterprise kind of situations. But then let's say that we have a case. And by the way, when you move things through the Kanban board for a law firm, what I'm a fan of is that this has to map to a matter or a case unit. The reason I say case unit as opposed to a case is because let's say that there's 4 defendants. So, you know, the example that, like, let's say that I'm suing like Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee and Hulk Hogan, right? For kicking my butt, for my microphone problems. So then I'm going to sue them, but they're each going to have their own trajectory. So Larry versus Mr. T goes here, right? And then there's Larry versus, you know, Bruce Lee, right? Goes there. And then Larry versus Chuck Norris. So it might be the same initial complaint or what have you, or lawsuit, but these may settle all at different trajectories and stuff. So that's why we call them case units, right? Because they all might be in different places. And I don't like individual tasks going through here. What you want to see is where the matters are, right? That's what's important. Okay. I have some examples of waste elimination. And so here is how a lot of law firms do their invoicing right now. This is what I know because this is what we do. So this is incredibly wasteful. So, and it's also a shame because there's so many better ways for law firms to get paid. So it's really a three-part process. For the hourly billers, they don't track their hours accurately. So what they'll do is they'll like maybe scrounge through their like documents at the end of the month, or they'll look through their legal pads or Outlook or whatever, and they'll try and reconstitute their billing for the month. Then what they'll do is some of them will even like not generate invoices using dedicated software. Some of them will build the invoices in Word. And then they have to print them out and they stuff them in envelopes and they stamp them and address them and do all that kind of stuff. And then they have to wait 30, 60, 90 days for the payment to arrive, however long it takes them. Then they get the stack of bills, especially if they're in a high volume practice, and they have to open them and they got a stack of checks. And then they got to like deposit them into the bank. And then they also got to enter them into their ledgering software, however they do it. So compare that to what I'm about to show you, right? So if you can see my screen, and I'm assuming you can see my screen right now, right? You can see this is the Rocket Matter application, right? What I want to do is I'm going to add a new matter, all right? So let's just add a new matter. Let's add me, Lawrence Port. And let's call this matter blue versus green. All right, add matter. So we have a new matter. Let's go in there and let's change one or two things. Let's make sure that when I send out my bills that they get emailed to me, right? Now, I can always share it with somebody else, but I'm sharing it with the client in this sense, which is Larry Port. And let's use this email address. This comes directly from my contact system because, you know, I've represented this guy before, okay? And let's save this matter. So let's do this. Let's say that we had an event, right? And let's say that we met with client. And let's say that it happened, let's say that it happened from 10:45 to 11:45 a.m. Let's make it yesterday, okay? All right, perfect. And let's bill for that. So this is my calendar event. So it was something that was on my calendar and I'm going to be billing for it as well, right? So we're trying to capture that time organically, right? And then let's say that there was like a task that we had to do. Let's say that it was like do some research, okay? And I could run a timer, or I can just say it's 1.1 billable hours, right? I can do that. Oops, I got to assign a date for that. So let's say it was today, and let's copy the task title, and let's say that, right? So organic kind of time capture based on like how you're doing your work, right? And then let's just say I did a straight up time entry too, right? So straight up time entry, right? So the whole idea is that, you know, you want to make it as simple as possible to track your time. And tracking your time, let's be honest, is a total pain in the ass. Sorry for my French, but it really is. But it's the best way for you to measure the ROI on what you're doing. And when I'm talking about ROI, I'm talking about return on investment. So if you're doing flat fee or contingency or one of those types of matters where you're not doing hourly, how do you really know if what you're doing is, how do you know if you're ahead or behind on the matter? You don't. You only know unless you're like kind of tracking your time on that kind of thing. So the more you can kind of do it organically, the better. If you are an hourly biller and you're not billing as you work, like I showed you with calendar events and tasks and just randomly adding time as you go through your day, then you're going to end up like shortchanging yourself, because when you go through at the end of the day or at the end of the month, you're going to misrepresent and you're going to err on the side of your client that, oh, you know, I'm not, you're going to miss stuff. So there was a statistic from, going back and talking about waste, there was a statistic from Thomson Reuters and Georgetown Law. They published this report about like legal billing. And the report was that like lawyers only collect about 71% of the work that they truly perform, which is a shame. I mean, that's tremendous amount of waste, 29% waste. So in any case, let's say that it's the end of the month and we're ready to invoice, right? We click invoice. Now, one of the big problems too is, and so I'm doing this on a matter by matter basis, right? I'm just showing you for illustration purposes what it looks like when I bill one matter. And then we have this ledger and we can go and we can see, okay, I have like $320 that's due to me for this matter. And I can see that there's a little envelope here that shows me that this has been invoiced out, right? That has been sent over email. So on the client side of things, I'm pretending that I'm the client for right now. And I get this new email. It says your current invoice for blue versus green. And it comes with an invoice. And look, and here we go. Met with client, do some research, straight up time entry, the stuff that we just entered from the law firm side of things. Think about how easy it was to produce this, how much less waste there was. There was no folding this thing. There was no sending it. There was no stamp. A lot more straightforward, right? Now, so here, there's also a link to pay. Now, this is another major thing, right? If I go back to Rocket Matter and I refresh this page, you'll see that the envelope has been opened, which means that the client has seen the bill. The client has gotten the email and they've opened it and we know that they've seen it, right? So that's like usually like kind of an issue. So and there's like reporting on this kind of stuff. So what this allows the law firm to do is be like, okay, look, I know that my client has seen it. They're a step closer to paying it. If there's a dispute, you can say, hey, look, I know you saw the invoice or whatever it is. But in reality, this takes us to a point like, so people get a lot of like same day payments, right? So they send the invoice out, and because people are used to paying this way now with credit cards, they just go ahead and they pay it right away. So I'm going to use that. By the way that my address just spit out right there, that's using a tool called Text Expander. So if I type in BR, lowercase br, it's gonna, BR, not NR, it's gonna spit out Boca Raton, right? Because I'm using a tool called Text Expander. And by the way, if there's any questions on anything that I'm doing right now during this demo, feel free to ask me. So remember, my spirit is let's reduce waste everywhere we possibly can. So, you know, that's why I use tools like Text Expander. And that's why I'm showing you guys how to use this. 496, country is USA. And then I have this credit card number that I can use. That's a bogus credit card numbers for the purposes of demonstration. And and here's my CVV. So if now I review this and I pay it, I'm the client, remember. And then what's nice for the law firm on the law firm side of things is that if they go back here into their ledger as this processes, what's going to happen with this payment is that those funds are going to be available next day in the bank account for the law firm. And for the client, they're done. And then the ledgers in Rocket Matter will be updated. So this is taking a long time to process. So let's just see if the payment has been posted yet or not. Maybe not. Well, the idea is anyhow that you pay the bill and then you get like your Rocket Matter updated and you have your ledger and so on and so forth. So that's basically how this works. Now, somebody has a question. Is there a way to enter mass time on multiple matters for attorneys who refuse to organically enter their time and has their assistant do it? There are bulk time entry ways to do that, yes, in Rocket Matter. So Aileen, if you want to email me, larry@rocketmatter.com, and ask that question. Because again, I don't know if I'm going to have these chat transcripts. Hopefully Jonathan can send me the chat transcripts and I can kind of like help you out with those. But if you have any questions, email me, larry@rocketmatter.com on that one. Let's see. All right, so we have let me address, by the way, here you can see that the online payment has been processed. So like if we take this, I'm going to answer the questions in 1 second, but I just want to kind of show the like logical conclusion of this. So let's say that instead of billing things one by one, we're able to do this across everybody at once. So I go to my billing dashboard and I see that I have $7,000 ready to go out. I click that number, and then I can filter everything that has to go out by, you know, whatever number, like primary attorney or whatever fields, primary attorney, clients, matter, custom fields, start date, end dates, anything like that. If I want to leave these all blank, I can see everything, no filters. And then I have all these things that can go out. I can adjust them, you know, on an as needed basis if I need to. And then I can click invoice and go through that same flow that you saw before, right? So in any case, somebody's saying, Randy, we're running out of time, but if you want to migrate over, yeah, migrating over to our platform is something that we do very well. If you want more information on migrating, email me, Larry@rocketmatter.com, and I can help you with that. But I will tell you, everybody, this is that when you think about like going to a new practice management software, and I know that a lot of you guys are on like probably old legacy systems like PC Law and Time Matters or Juris or Orion that are kind of like past their prime. It's just important to do that right and spend a lot of time thinking about that. And, you know, if anybody tells you that migrating data is going to be like a non-event or easy, they're not really telling you the straight story. Again, I have a white paper on migrating data. So Larry@rocketmatter.com, I can help you with, I can at least send that reference your way so that you can know what to expect when you're going to migrate data. There's a kind of a complicated question here that has like a 4-part thing. This is from anonymous attendee. They're saying, in the future, could you, one, familiarize myself with ABA model rules? If there's a certain ABA model rule that you want me to, I am familiar with them, that you want me to address, I will address those. So anonymous attendee, if you want to step forward and send me a non-anonymous email, I will answer your question. Most frequent areas of attorney discipline, right? The most frequent areas of attorney discipline usually are trust account violations, right? The third, so there's a lot of different questions rolled up into this one thing. Are there any like, and if you email me, I can answer discrete questions. This one has a lot of different things that I have to unpack. Is there anything else that I can help you answer with? Again, if you need to reach me for anything, I happen to live in Florida. I happen to live in Boca Raton. So even though I run Rocket Matter, and Rocket Matter is this like international, like, company, I'm a Florida guy. So, normally I would be at the convention over here at the, Boca Raton Hotel or up there at the Marriott in Orlando, but it's just, one of these weird situations. But, I'm always happy to talk to attorneys. I'm also always looking for podcast guests. So if you are doing anything kind of innovative in your law firm, like in terms of like processing or streamlining things, like always want to talk to people. A lot of attorneys have like kind of little initiatives that they're doing on the side, whether like small businesses. I love interviewing them too. Definitely check out Rocket Matter if you haven't. Larry@rocketmatter.com. Check out the 10-Minute Law Firm podcast. Check out the Lean Law Firm podcast, the 2 podcasts that I do. Let me know. Would love to hear from you guys.
All right. Well, thank you, Larry. We appreciate your time and the presentation today. And also like to thank all the attendees who viewed your presentation today, and just remind them that the course number again is 3368, and you'll need to go and self-report that using the Florida Bar's member portal. And we will be sending an email to all the attendees with a link to the recording, and it'll have links to Larry's slides and hopefully the white papers that he mentioned as well.
Yeah, and Jonathan, I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I want to thank all the participants for their time today too. I hope everybody's doing well, and I look forward to hopefully talking to people.
All right. Thanks, Larry. Have a good day.